Hello. And we are good. Awesome. Hello. How's everybody doing? How's things? How's your week been? Close that. Sweet. That one. That one. Boom. Hello. Hello Sophie. Hello OJMH, and hello yet another user, and/or Hateslin. Probably saying it wrong, so I'm gonna keep with yet another user, unless you fancy me learning the proper pronunciation, because I'd rather not say it wrong if I can help it, you know. Anyway, hello. How's everybody doing? How's things? How has your week been? Mine's been interesting. I've what was I doing this week? Last week was the 870 Evo. Interestingness. The Samsung 980 Pro video came out yesterday, which I'm very pleased to see the reaction to it. I tried to be sensible with my wording and all that, but yeah, I think I'm quite happy with how that one turned out. Doing Minecraft server things, nice. Is the 5800X compatible with a B450 motherboard? So yes, it is. If that B450 motherboard has had a BIOS upgrade, it has to have the BIOS upgrade before you put the 5800X in it. Well, technically speaking, you can boot it with the 5800X in, but it won't actually boot. It will just cycle through and probably turn itself off. So the answer is yes, with a BIOS upgrade. Stefan, what is the best 27-inch 4040p 144Hz IPS monitor? Outright best is kind of hard to determine. Generally speaking, I say the one that I have here, the Aorus FI27Q-P. That is generally the higher end option and the sort of the best quality you can generally get, but there are a lot of very good options in the sort of middling price categories around the sort of £300, $400 mark, like the Gigabyte M27Q and the G27Q. Who else? The Acer VG271UP. All of those are 4040p IPS monitors. And higher refresh rate, I should clarify. So yeah. The A's produce the like the ending of the word monitor. Like monitor. Keter Ellen? I'm sorry, I'll keep a mental note of that and I'll work it out for next time instead of having a mess in the chat. Hello Phil, how you doing, man? And hello Jim. But hello, welcome to everybody who's watching. All 14 of you currently. Hello, how you guys doing? How has your week been? What was I talking about? Oh, I was talking about the Samsung 980 Pro. And that was, I'm really surprised at Samsung SSDs in general, because I've been testing their new SATA SSD as well, the 870 Evo that came out on Tuesday, and technically I was meant to have a video out on that yesterday, but my sample seems to be broken, so we'll see. I've got another one coming tomorrow, just to clarify, but what I've found is that Samsung, I guess, seem to have taken the long-standing lead that they had in SSD, in the SSD market. For the longest time, they were the go-to for SSDs in general, right? But I think they said that it was the 960 Evo was when they first introduced their intelligent turbo writes feature, which essentially means It's the same sort of thing that you get on the QLC SSDs. It's SLC caching, single bit memory caching, except the way that they do it isn't by using, you know, SLC NAND flash as well as, you know, the TLC that they're normally using. They're using their standard TLC but writing to it in a single bit fashion, which is faster. But for whatever reason, they've put what seem like arbitrary limits on it, and the new 870 EVO, which is a SATA SSD, the 500 gig model, you can only write 22 gigabytes worth of data to that before the cache craps out and you're getting like 300 megabytes per second in writes instead of the 530 that they promise on the box. And the same thing happened with the 980 Pro. When you run out of SLC or intelligent turbo write caching, you go from 5 gigasecond writes to 1. Like, that's nearing on false advertising claims, because at no point in that, in any of their marketing for the product publicly, do they say that, oh, by the way, if you happen to write lots of data to this drive, yeah, it's just gonna run at a fifth of the speed that we quote it to be. Like, how is that okay? Like, at least with QLC SSDs, it kind of makes sense, but for the, you know, the what's it called? Halo product, the top end, the fastest, the best one that they could perform, I just don't get it. Should I reinstall Windows on SSD or transfer a clone of it from a previous one to a new SSD? Generally, reinstalling Windows is a better bet, especially when swapping things like drives or hardware. You can clone it over, but you will probably end up having more trouble with the drive, especially older drivers and a significant number of other issues that I have experienced in the past that I would generally recommend just installing on its own. Also, hello to F7, hello to Simon, how you doing, man? And did I see anyone else come in? Hello to Ish, how you doing, man? How's things? Still got a really good SATA 850 EVO still going strong, and an 860 M.2 EVO main rig. Yeah, I seem to remember both of those drives, I think. But yeah, those were prior to Samsung's intelligent turbo write thing, yeah, nice. Can you use 1080p on a 4040p monitor? You can, but it doesn't always look the best because it's not direct one-to-one scaling. With a 1080p resolution running on a 4K monitor, you can just scale one 1080p pixel across 4 4K pixels, and that works fine. But 4040p to 1080p isn't quite as crisp normally. What games do you play? It kind of varies. I've actually been playing Star Wars Battlefront 2, the newer one, because it was free on Epic Games and Origin. So I've been playing that a bit. There's a new game called Due Process. It's early access, and I've been playing that a bit. Generally things like COD Modern Warfare, although I haven't played that in a little while. I've been playing Flight Simulator. I've been playing Watch Dogs Legion. I've been playing Cyberpunk. I've been playing a lot, and also not for very long, you know, in a given time. So yeah, lots of stuff. Nice one, Luca. Nice one. And nice F7 in stock for like 20 minutes. I believe that. I do have Cold War. I haven't really played the multiplayer. I played through the campaign, but I didn't play much of the multiplayer. I played a little bit, but oh, and I played a little bit of Zombies, but again, not too much of it. Have you tried Red Dead Redemption 2 on PC? I'm not a massive fan of anything Yodi. Anything that doesn't have, you know, cars and guns and planes and things is generally not my style, effectively. So, yeah. Is the Zombies console only? No. Zombies is on PC as well. A good going romp. Indeed it was. I did enjoy the story of both Modern Warfare and Cold War, actually, surprisingly. But, yeah, it was good. Fair play. On the juiced recommendation. I have the 980 Pro, and I found them great. Also, Cyberpower drives are not available in Australia, only on Amazon from the USA. I got you. Okay, that makes sense. I am on the waitlist for the WD SN850, which is Western Digital's version of a true PCI Gen 4 drive. So that will be interesting. And I think there are a couple of other ones that are on the market as well, likely using the what's it called, Ryzen E18 controller. So yeah. Is the 4000 Diego case? Yeah, it's pretty decent. I had the 4000X, which is the same thing, just with glass instead of airflow in the front of the tower, and yeah, it was decent. I have the, I'm going to assume that's AOC 24HC1Q. Fair enough. Doesn't have a VESA mount. Are there any alternative solutions for that? Probably not. The only possible solution is, depending on how it mounts, you might be able to find a replacement bracket that can, I'm assuming it's one of the ones that slot in from the bottom, and so you could, you know, slot that in, slot a replacement bracket in that would offer you a VESA mount or arm attachment or something else. I liked WD as a brand before Shinglegate, true, but their SSDs all seem overpriced for meh to good quality. Yeah, that's fair. I have an SN700 in my PC. It's actually my boot drive, and that was pretty decent. Although the SN700 is a little bit on the old side. The 750 is the newer version of that. That's a little bit faster, and that was a little on the expensive side for sure. I haven't looked up the SN850. I'm gonna go offline on Steam so that you don't get those notification messages. Do that. Quite partial to ADATA NVMEs. Decent bang for the buck. The SX8200 Pro and the SX8200 were definitely great drives and decent value for money. I think the thing was that when those came out, the market was a little bit different. Now it's a lot, like, the market is a lot cheaper, and they didn't pull the price of those down that quickly. And the S50 Lite just seems really weird to me. Like, it's technically a Gen 4 SSD. Technically. Wouldn't really want to use, like, it's a decent drive, but it's basically no faster than a Gen 3 drive. So why? Right? And I haven't seen any of the Gen 4, proper Gen 4 ones yet. Although I believe they do have a new proper Gen 4, like full fat Gen 4, like the Sabrent Rocket 4 Plus and the 980 Pros. Can you explain the difference between CL16 and CL18? So the CL is cast latency, which is one of the two metrics for memory speeds and timings. The cast latency is the timings, I think access time. And generally the lower the access time is, the more responsive and faster the memory is, and the higher the frequency is, again, the faster and more responsive it is. So what you want to do is maximize the highest frequency you can and the lowest timing number you can. But generally speaking, there's a balance between, say, 3600 megahertz memory normally comes in CL18, CL19. You can get it in CL16, and if you're really pushing it, you can get it at CL14, but you can't normally get like 4000 megahertz and CL12, for example. How long do you think it will take for Gen 4 SSDs come down in price now that Intel supports PCIe Gen 4? So the thing probably isn't about who supports it. It's probably more about the availability of the drives and the cost of manufacture, generally speaking. The first PCI Gen 4 SSDs, the Cyberpower Rocket 4 Non Plus, have come down a fair bit, and they're now not too much more expensive than the standard Rocket 3. So they are coming down in price, but I think it's more going to be a case of volume, and once the lower end drives can come down in price, the top end ones can come down as well. If I had a 5600X and a 3060, is it better to get 1440 or 1080p monitor? So the 3060 can definitely do 1440p, and a 1440p high refresh rate monitor is a very nice experience to play on. So that would be my recommendation, but you might not be playing at like ultra settings, everything, depending on the game, just to set your expectations. I bought 32 gigs of 3600 MHz CL16 and X570 Tomahawk, but the RAM's not in the QVL. It's the new Z. Will it work on my board? Yes, it should. The QVL list is just the list of DIMMs that they have actually tried. That doesn't mean that if it's not on the list, it flat out won't work. There might be potentially, effectively, there's more chance of it being unstable, but that's not to say that it won't work. And honestly, I don't think I've ever bothered to check a QVL list, except for first gen Ryzen. But for second, third, and fifth, it's really not a problem. And for Intel, generally speaking, the same. Although the fact that you've got an X570 board means that you're not running Intel. So yeah, you get the picture. What motherboard do I need if I want to use the maximum potential of a 5950X, 3090, and 64 gigs of RAM? So, if you're willing to spend that much money on the other parts, you're probably willing to spend some money on a very good motherboard. And so, the thing about the Ryzen chips is that they really don't draw much power, and so there really isn't much. There really isn't much difference in terms of the performance between one of the cheapest B450 boards and the most expensive X570 board. With that said, if you're spending that much money, X570 is probably the way to go. It does give you a bit better functionality in terms of more PCI Gen 4 support, which is always nice. And in terms of which specific board to go with, really, they're all pretty similar. I have an X570 Master, which Synergy says beware of it because of the RGB software. That's true, I just don't really care about RGB, so I've never really looked at it. Generally speaking, Gigabyte's like Windows software isn't normally known as the best. But beyond the fact that I have two of them and I kind of swap them out, and I've technically broken one of them by installing it in and out of PCs for the last year and a half straight, it's been pretty decent for me and is definitely overbuilt for the job. There's also the X570 Taichi from what's it called? ASRock, that's the one, which generally does a pretty decent job. And I think it still has 3 M.2 slots. The only problem I had with that board was the M.2 slot cover, or the M.2 SSD heatsink, is all one part with the chipset. So if you've got a Gen 4 drive or whatever that comes with a heatsink, you can't use that, right? You would have to take the heatsink off the SSD. But it's generally well renowned as a pretty decent board. So any of the higher end X570 ones you should have a pretty good time with. What are the best budget RGB fans? Honestly, I don't know. I don't really cover fans nor RGB that much, so I'm kind of out of the loop on that one, I'm afraid. Samir, so not really. The long answer is they have to be extremely vibration resistant. They have to be resistant to significant amounts of radiation, like solar radiation, but also cosmic background radiation, which our atmosphere shields us from quite significantly. And when you've got a chip on a satellite, you need to be able to protect it a lot. And as far as I'm aware, generally speaking, they tend to be slightly larger process nodes, because especially thanks to that abundance of radiation blasting the chips. If they're smaller, what's it called, electron migration can happen more readily. Most of the, like, how do I say this? I'm an idiot, and you shouldn't listen to me about satellites and stuff. But if it's the best answer you're gonna get from me. Highly specialized ones. Paramedic on Twitch says the Antec prisms are a good shout for budget RGB fans. Any opinions on the ongoing GPU shortages? I don't really know that I have an opinion on it. It kind of makes sense. It's the, like, from all of the look, I'm not wrong. From all of the launches that we've seen from both AMD and Nvidia, the new cards are a pretty significant step up in performance, and so it's a very sensible time to be upgrading. Also, the fact that everybody is kind of generally locked at home means that you're spending, generally speaking, more time on your computer and probably more likely to notice performance drops because you're not commuting to work, you're using your PC more often, all that sort of stuff. So I understand why. I also understand why there are shortages. There is a global pandemic that's definitely not helping, and the sheer fact that there is such high demand relative to previous years. Could they have anticipated it and maybe planned for it a bit better? Probably, yeah. Did they? No, clearly. But yeah, it's what it is. We have to wait until everything's kind of available again. So. I have an external hard drive which gives out a beep sound when I try to run it. I check the hard drive after opening. The head was pretty messed up. Is there any possibility to run to fix the hard drive? So if you open the hard drive up, one, if you're not in a clean room, that's a very bad thing to do. And two, if the head is messed up, the only solution for that is to send it off to a recovery center who can basically just replace the head as long as the platter isn't damaged. If the platter's damaged, then really not a good chance of you getting any data off that. But the answer is send it to a specialist. OJMH, Paramedic on Twitch said the Antec prisms. Dang, I wasn't on Twitch to clip it. You see, yeah, it's only going to be up on YouTube for perpetuity or until I unlist it. Is 1440p to 4K upgrade worth it for non-gaming? Can you clarify what you mean by non-gaming? Like, what specific applications are you going with? As usual, if I miss any questions, feel free to post them back. Oh, how much did Samsung bribe you to take your review down? Ha 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 ha. They haven't, remarkably. Technically speaking, I didn't post a Samsung review, but that's because the drive that I got was broken, and they've sent me a new one for me to test. But yeah, for VS Code, probably not. you're probably more like you're probably better off having multiple displays rather than higher resolution. Technically speaking, at 4K you would have a bit more screen real estate to divide up, but in reality, I also use VS Code, and having front end API and a web browser up to see my work is pretty useful. And I have a triple screen setup is what I'm getting at there. Have you found a 5600X yet? Sadly not. I have finally purchased a 5900X for my system, but that hasn't even come in yet. And so, yeah, no, the answer. I'm thinking of using my 120 gig SSD as a cache using Intel Smart Response software or software like Primo Cache, and shift my Windows onto my hard drive, WD Green 2TB hard drive. I can see why you think that's a good idea. In practice, trust me, it won't work. Or it will work, it just will be way worse. The reason is that the caching softwares generally don't either work until Windows is booted, or they don't work all that well in preserving actual responsiveness. So running your Windows on your SSD will be a snappier, faster experience for you to use than using it as a cache drive. Hello Nick, recently upgraded to a 5950X and had some blue screens, WH, yay, uncorrectable error, found it seemed to be an issue with the motherboard, not giving me enough voltage. What would be a good minimum voltage to give? I put 1.35 for now. Blue screens are gone, but not sure if that's safe. So the what you call it? Where's hardware info? I'm running a 3900X at the moment, which is pretty similar, and it is running at 1.375 volts, 1.38 automatic. It in its turbo boost modes, or XFR modes, it runs to 1.469 volts reported. So yeah, no problems running at 1.35. I'm kind of unsure why your motherboard isn't supplying enough voltage. It should be doing that automatically. Perhaps check if there is a maybe even just look at the precision boost overdrive settings and see if you can enable that. It will probably give you more performance, but it should also help increase the voltage automatically, rather than just a fixed voltage. Because the nice thing about the new CPUs is that they can basically be idling. Like my CPU is now, I'm using, where's OBS? Oh, it doesn't tell me, does it? I'm using 22%, 20% of my CPU utilization, and it's kind of barely taking over, whereas when I'm gaming or rendering or whatever, it can bump the voltage up and therefore power as well. OBS shows CPU utilization as well. It's just I'm using Streamlabs OBS, which has moved it or removed it, I can't remember. It's moved it to the performance metrics tab. So OBS is using 4.2% of my CPU. And apparently 60 FPS. I didn't think I was streaming at 60. Oh well. Do you watch or listen to stand-up comedy? If yes, who? Not really. I don't really do very well with cringe humor, which is often what comes of those sorts of things. Very, very long time ago, I used to watch Danny Boyle, mostly because he was, the most offensive and Scottish, and so that kind of that jived with my personality at the time. You're streaming at 60 FPS 720p. Oh, I thought it was 1080p. So I am. Ah, is that okay? I'll sort that for next time. because I'm well, I'm not recording, but I'm my camera is 1080p 30. Yes, Frankie Boyle. I don't know what I said. No worries, Antonio. I searched for high-end X570 motherboard. I have two that I like: the RS Extreme or the Crosshair 8, 7, Dark Hero. So the one thing that I would say is I don't have much experience with ASUS AMD boards anymore. They just haven't really sent that many over, and in fact, they're actually collecting two of them tomorrow. But my initial experience with the Asus Crosshair 6 Hero, which is obviously the X370 one rather than X570, and so quite old, things will have changed, was that there were quite a lot of bugs and issues with that board. Like I said, I don't have any experience with basically any of the new X570 Asus boards, so I can't tell you if any of those are present, and also the if those sorts of issues that you only really get when you use something full time. But yeah. Uh, 3900 XT here, 100 and 1.263 volts max. That's because I prefer all-core OC to PBO. Fair play. As far as I'm aware, I don't have PBO enabled. As far as I'm aware, this is static or standard for the 3900X. But yeah, it's peaked at 1.494 volts apparently on one core and 4.694 on the other, on the rest. And apparently the peak clock is 4.575 gigahertz. Decent. You can pin the metrics at the bottom of the main window. Yeah, I've not thought too much about this, clearly. Also, I have just reinstalled Windows, so all of this is a bit interesting. What do you think of Optane memory now that they're being removed? Do you think it had some hope somewhere? So Optane memory, in terms of using the Optane modules in RAM specifically, seemed like a promising idea for sure. But mostly in servers, right? Mostly where you still need relatively high speed, fast, what is essentially level 5 cache, because you generally have level 1, 2, and 3 in the CPU. RAM is colloquially referred to as level 4 sometimes, and so that sort of Optane memory modules could, in essence, function as a sort of level 5, an intermediary between your RAM and your probably fast NVMe based storage in terms of the speed difference there. Sort of help bridge that gap, also get large capacities in closer to the CPU essentially. But from a consumer standpoint, it doesn't really matter that much. There really aren't many applications where for the average person anyway, you need all that much RAM. And even though someone like me is a bit more of a specialist, I suppose, I have 64 gigs and that's fine for me. If I could have 128 gigs, that'd be great, but I don't need Optane memory in there to augment that. It's definitely more on the server side of things. I downloaded Blender and it says I need a newer version of OpenGL. How do I download that? My assumption would be, OpenGL website kind of thing. In reality, it's probably more baked into the OS, which probably your problem. You could try GPU drivers if you're using OpenGL for GPU acceleration. But yeah, if you're using a 2 new version of Blender, that could be a problem. Out of the box, the 1500X pumps 1.445 volts whenever running Prime 95 or Cinebench on core. Yeah, that sounds about right. The 3900X does a very similar thing. And they have very similar power profiles. What's the best 1440p 144Hz monitor? Outright best is the probably the Aorus FI27Q-P. There are some very good sort of middle ground options as well if you don't want to spend that much, like the Gigabyte M27Q and G27Q, and also the Acer VG271UP, or US, I think is the 165Hz one. Clockers have a 5600X for sale for £278.90p. Not bad. Not bad at all. It's in stock, isn't it? If I remember rightly. Why put fast cores and efficient cores in a desktop PC? Alder Lake. Is that the come on, brain. Evo type thing? Or am I off on that one? I don't remember Intel's code names. Harold can't wait for Rocket League. Nice. How's your day been so far? Not too bad. I've been benchmarking this laptop actually. It's kind of an interesting one. It's Acer's Concept D7 easel, which has a very stiff hinge, but the fancy thing about it is it has a screen that does this. Slide. So you can, like, you know, draw on it. It has a little stylus thing in here, and then you can which is kind of cool, except for that the hinge wobbles like oh hell. The touch stylus is how do I say, racist against left-handed people. It works just fine with a right hand. Like if you try and write with the right hand, but if you try and write with your left hand, then it doesn't do any palm rejection at all. Yeah. It does, like, it's a full laptop. Like, it's also really heavy and very, very thick for a portable, you know, whatever. But it has a 10875H and a 2070 Max Q in this specific model. Although you can get different models, and I think you can. Oh no, I don't think you can get the Pro version. Because with Acer's Concept D line in general, the Pro versions come with the Quadros. Which technically a bit better, and the panel that's under this should be very well color accurate, and it's Pantone certified, validated. That's the one. So yeah, it's interesting. I feel like it's a very good idea, but not quite as well executed as I was hoping for, maybe. Yeah, it is a bit. It's also quite loud, which is another thing. It's like, this is meant to be an art laptop or whatever that you can pull out the stencil and start stylus and start drawing on, but it's not. It doesn't quite fill that market for me. It's an iPad with a Pro stand. It is. Thinking of ultra-wide 4040p, do you think I would have compatibility issues with games and scaling? So they, you will probably have a few games where they won't have thought about it, and you'll have black bars somehow. Generally speaking, it's got to a point where I probably wouldn't be too worried about using one as my main display. So, yeah, probably fine. What do you think of the news? NVIDIA won't require differentiation between Max Q and Max P on advertising 3000 series. I think that it's a really dumb thing to do because there's a very big difference between those two. Because so Max Q is their designed for basically severely underclocked. Like the normal versions of those graphics cards in laptops are already fairly significantly underclocked for a compared to the desktop counterpart, but the Max Q variants are even more underclocked than the standard ones. Whereas Max P, if I remember rightly, is the performance version, which is getting closer or trying to get as close to desktop performance in a laptop as possible. And yeah, it's going to be frustrating if that's the case, because then you'll have to go deep into clock speeds to work out if one laptop has a better 3080 than the other, right? Nice one, F7. GG. GG. Have the temps been good to warrant the loud fans? 98 degrees Celsius on the CPU, because of course it is. Yeah, I haven't seen an Intel based laptop that hasn't turboed to the moon, got to 98, 99 degrees Celsius, thermal throttle to all hell, and then gone back down to reasonable numbers instead. So yeah, yeah, it's warranted. Also, the 2070 Max Q, especially doing accelerated tasks or playing games on it, can get pretty loud as well. Just bought X570 Tomahawk Wi-Fi. How much notice should you take of the QVL list? In general, not that big a deal. If you can find a memory module on the QVL list, then that is good. But I haven't really paid attention to a QVL list in a few years, and as long as you're not running like first gen Ryzen, it really doesn't matter, generally speaking, what memory modules you're running, as long as they're the right sort of frequency and timing, so around 3600 megahertz, and if you can get it CL14, that'd be great. CL16 is fine, CL18 is okay as well. Hello. Hello to both of the people are saying hello. Hello, how you doing? How's things? Have I been in pain? Mostly. Is it possible to use Ryzen Master to OC laptop CPUs? As far as I'm aware, no. Especially because they just launched a new set of chips, the 5000X series chips, that do support overclocking. Can you suggest a good desk chair? Well, I would be biased if I didn't recommend the one that I sit in all day, which is the Noble Chairs Hero. There are plenty of other options, including, depending on how much you're willing to spend, the sort of Herman Miller type ones, although they are 3 times more expensive than this, and I personally haven't found one that I actually like sitting in yet. So, got no Wi-Fi card for my PC, so I'm getting an Ethernet cable tomorrow with Cat 7. Do you think it was a good idea? Cat 7 is probably overkill. Cat 7 can do 10 gig over like 100 meters or something dumb. So yes. but it's going to be fine. It's going to work just fine. How's your hero holding up wear-wise? Barely any signs of wear. I have a slight, the stitching in the back panel, the lower back, where like your belt buckle or your belt rides is like slightly kind of worn out there, but the actual fabric itself, no issues. I have a like what's essentially a folded up blanket on the bottom part of the chair for a bit of extra comfort and a bit of sort of wear protection, but I'm not overly careful with it, and I've got 0 marks at all. I'm more excited about actually being able to buy anything over any new launch. Yeah, that's pretty fair. It's pretty fair. Bill. What about a Ryzen 3600 and a GTX 1660 Super? What motherboard is required for that? If you want instant compatibility, any B450 motherboard is a good shout. One of the cheaper ones is fine. You should be able to use a B450 motherboard as long as it's had a BIOS upgrade to support the new chips. And those are good options as well and a lot better value. So if you can find an updated B450 board, do that. Otherwise, B550. How long have you had the chair? I want to say it's over a year. Might be a year and a half or 2. I have had the other one, which is the Icon, for another year or 2 before that, I think. And I've had no problems with either of them. Well, I say no problems with either of them. The tilting mechanism broke on this one. It's the same generic tilting mechanism that any gaming chair uses. With that said, they did send out replacement parts instantly, so not too bad. I'm always worried the cushion's getting too squishy where I sit on the frame below. That specifically isn't an issue for me. They are as firm as the day I got them. Hello, Void Gaming. How you doing, man? What do you prefer, 14-inch laptop or a 15.6-inch one for work or productivity? 15-inch any day. Normally, like, technically speaking, what do you call it? 17.3-inch or whatever. In theory is better because a bit more screen real estate, but in practice, they're generally just a little bit too big, too cumbersome for me to carry around. 15 is the nice sweet spot for me for both visual size, but also for clarity and ability to see stuff on screen. Mine's the same, looks new. That's almost a year, 10 hours a day. Indeed, yeah. Do you use a I assume that's 10 keyless or full fat keyboard? Clearly mechanical. Yes, indeed. I use a full size keyboard. It is the Cooler Master Master Keys Pro L. It hasn't been sold for a little while, but it's still my favorite. Uses Cherry MX Brown switches. I've been told that I need to try a wide selection of other brown-like switches, which I'm in the process of getting my hands on to try. But yeah, I prefer having a number pad personally, so that's fine for me. If I could have any keyboard in the world, well, I kind of already have it. It's the Wu-Tang 2. That's also a full size, although you can buy the Wu-Tang 1. But the Wu-Tang boards, while they are very impressive and very cool feature sets, can't have tactile with an optical switch like that. And yeah. Do I work for Cyberpower? No. I did do an ad for them though. Much like people like Linus do for places like Honey. I did an ad for them that they run quite frequently. It's a website tour video I did. So yes, no, I don't work for them. I have worked with them though. I was thinking of the Extrafy X4 TCal Retro one. Nice. You have the TCal version of the Master Keys, the Pro S, right? And yeah, good price. Yeah, you need to have bought all their albums, including the one that sold for like $1 million, and then you can buy one of those motherboards. It's just how it works. 6800 XT or 3080. I haven't tested a 6800 XT, so I can't really tell you. But from the performance figures, it looked like the 6800 XT was better. But I could be very wrong. I forgot about him. I forgot he existed. What is an acceptable amount of time before someone should upgrade their PC? So the answer is once you start noticing problems, right? Like if you are, in your case, if you're just gaming, right, that CPU is still plenty fine. Like, yes, if you upgraded to a Ryzen 5600X, for example, you would get more performance. You'd also get some more cores and extra sort of productivity work, if you performance, if you like. But in reality, if you're not noticing a problem, who cares what you have, right? Like, doesn't matter. If you're playing games and you start to notice that you can't run games at higher settings, or you're starting to actively notice the FPS drops, then yeah, it's time to think about upgrading your GPU probably first and then CPU later. But yeah, a purchase question is fine, right? Yeah. Is the Cyberpower Rocket 4 Plus much better than Gen 3 when using 3D modeling and gaming? So I'll answer your first question first. In reality, no, not really. With 3D modeling, you tend to not be too heavy on cache. It tends to just be writing the frames out, and normally your CPU or maybe GPU, if you're using GPU accelerated rendering, are the limitations there. But and for gaming, game load times really aren't any different. It's why I say in those reviews you don't need one of those Gen 4 drives. And I think I'm probably going to do a video on a revised do you need a PCI Gen 4 SSD with those newer ones in a few weeks. And that will be testing things like game load times, and I'm going to try and see the rendering and scrubbing performance and stuff like that. I'll use Puget Bench maybe, but yeah, I'll take a look. And your second question, should I go with 20, I think that rounds up to 25 inch, 1080p 280Hz or 1440p 165Hz IPS? So personally, I much prefer 1440p over the like ultra high refresh rate monitors like 280Hz or the new 360Hz ones that are coming. So for me personally, 1440p is a better gaming experience. It's a little more crisp, it's a little sharper, it looks a whole lot better, generally speaking, and you still get the higher refresh rate goodness from it as well. Joe, it's doing fine. It's my kind of vertical monitor now. It's the one that I use for Discord and that sort of stuff, and does a really good job. Yeah. I'm actually running it at 60 Hz now because I'm using what do you call it? HDMI because I'm using all of my other display ports. I've got two 1440p high refresh rate monitors and Valve Index. So that's my three display ports gone, and so I've only got HDMI left. What are your system specs? It's in the description, there's links to it all, but I've actually upgraded the CPU to a 3900X for now, and it will be a 5900X in the not too distant future. I'm using an RTX 2080 for graphics right now. I have a Sabrent Rocket a Sabrent Rocket Q 4TB drive as my new games drive because my old hard drive died. And I've got a WD SN700 for my boot drive and a Patriot Viper VP4100 as my editing and cache drive for that. 64 gigs of it's actually PNY RAM and an AORUS X570 master. When will At the Wheel have a meeting at the Nürburgring? Whenever all of the many lockdowns end and that's allowed again. I want to go to Donington first, though. Do a tractor there. Should you get a 3080 for 4040p with 10 gig or wait for the higher VRAM option? Not in a hurry, have a 2070. If you're not in a hurry, then waiting a little bit to see what new options come out. That could be a good thing, and also a newer or upgraded version of the 3080 coming out might help drop the price of the existing 3080 a little bit. With that said, is it a significant problem running 4040p at higher settings with 10 gigs of VRAM? Not really, not in the grand scheme of things. So, Indeed they did, yeah. Indeed they did. Get back to Not Kill 4 seasons on one of my strike days. Yes. Remember as a kid, my was it like grandpa, like step grandpa, whatever, used to race, and we went to Not Kill. They had a race there, and I got a signature from Sterling Moss, which was fun. I'm sure I still have that somewhere. Is there a downside to buying a last gen card? So yes and no. Buying last gen generally means that you're buying a what you call it? A used card, which comes with its own difficulties. If you're buying new, then generally speaking, if you match performance from old to new card kind of thing, there is, for example, in the RTX cards, there is a generational shift in RTX performance, if that matters to you, buying a 20 series card like a 2080 or 2080 Ti versus buying a 3070 or whatever else. Like the RTX performance will be downgraded there, and you might also miss out on some new features depending on what card you're going with there. But depends what card you're talking about. How do you use a USB-C VR headset with no USB-C ports? Ish with a dongle. Get a USB-C dongle that does active USB-C and have input power and input power, display, and USB to the hub, and that should work. Probably not a Thunderbolt 3 card because it will need to be USB active rather than Thunderbolt. If I pre-order a 3080 and a 4080, which do you think I'll get first? Well played, good sir. Well played. What do you think about the cancelled 3080 Ti and RTX 4000 rumors? So I definitely heard the rumors about the 3080 Ti. Didn't hear anything about RTX 4000. I think like it kind of makes sense from a competition standpoint. Those Ti cards are generally held back if they're generally pushed out if NVIDIA needs a quick response effectively, because they're just using the same chips that they would already be using, but just with a bit better, performance or worse performance, kind of thing. They already bin the cards, so all they need to do is add an extra card to the binning step, and hey, look, you've got a new option. And I guess they just don't see the performance from the, I guess, 6800 XT to be that big a deal. If AMD were to release the 6900 non-XT, that could change things. Nice one, Mark. You finally have a monitor, but no graphics card to run it. Yeah, fair. Cleaning your keyboard, cleaning out the key switch, especially with a bit of compressed air, if you have that, could be good. Yeah, just clean it out. It's normally the best bet. Get some isopropyl alcohol and soak it. Well, not soak it, but wash it out, kind of thing. Not quite sure what your question is, Ryan. 2080 Super is generally a lot cheaper than any 30 series cards. Yes, the only difference is that the 2080 Super is, I believe, not as fast. It's probably about as fast as a 3070, give or take, or 3060 Ti. Yeah. And yeah, stock is obviously more available of those cards. So yeah, like I said, the main difference there is going to be outright performance and then RTX performance. I have a 9700F with a stock CPU cooler, but it's non-overclockable with good airflow. A friend who writes for this little known place called Anantech, Mr. Dr. Ian Cuttress, wrote a review of the 10700 and 10700K chips, and today, and it's a very interesting read. But the main thing is that Intel's TDP numbers are, to say pointless is probably an understatement. So the way that Intel now labels TDP is the amount of power it will use or output at base clock, not including any turbo boost capabilities. What that means is that a 65 watt chip that you might have, well, it's probably drawing more like 150, maybe 200. And so you will probably benefit from a lot more performance with an aftermarket cooler, even something like a Cooler Master Hyper 212, whatever the newest version of that is, or the Arctic Freezer 34 Esports Duo is a very nice one. So yeah, you will benefit from that because it will be able to turbo boost itself higher. Does it, Nick? I didn't pay attention to the launch that clearly. Yes, the 10700K has 125 watt CDP but draws over 200 watts. That's true. The thing is that the 10700 non-K, which is a 65 watt chip, draws more power. It draws 210 instead of 205, according to Anantech and those Cuttress. What I was trying to say. Vinay, slowly is the answer. With that said, Charles, no, they're not. They are soldered in, unfortunately. Right, with that said, thank you guys for watching. I do these every Thursday night at 8 PM UK time, so if you have any more questions or you want to pop back next week or whenever, feel free to do so. But thank you for sticking around. Of course, plenty more videos as always, and the usual ways to support me if you're interested. Nice t-shirts like this one or whatever else. But thanks for watching, and we'll see you all next week.